Hello and welcome to Advertising and Marketing Technology at AWS. My name is Jerry Lowe. I am the head of Solutions Architecture for Advertising and Marketing Technology at AWS. Today we're going to step through an introduction. We'll discuss industry trends and advertising and technology and marketing technology solutions at AWS. And then finally, we'll wrap that up before you go home. So let's dive right in. The loss of third-party identifiers, third-party cookies as we know as, had really a significant downstream impact on almost every load in advertising and marketing today. And even though that was somewhat postponed, it is still a significant impact. So let's take a look at this impact and how it impacts our customers. So first-party data is now more important than ever, and this results in customers focusing on developing their Customer 360 workloads. Secondly, they're looking at ways that they can actually share this data with partners in a privacy-safe fashion to include data enrichment. Next, when they look at analytics and data science, this now has to include components without any identifiers, such as contextual data, to identify the audiences and segments that they must find. Then finally, activating these audiences and segments for advertising now becomes a critical workload, especially given the high volumes, low latency and low cost requirements in the space. And finally, delivering those personalized experiences that customers expect is now significantly more challenging. And this is an area that customers are innovating in. So when we look at Amazon Web Services and really the depth and breadth of services and infrastructure that's provided, we have to consider why this is really important for you, the customers. And it is important to note that 90% of our roadmap is really dictated by customer needs. So what you see here is really a result of customers. So what we find is that the number one priority for customers is really increase revenue. Number two is improve net margin. So how does AWS actually contribute to these two priorities? So let's take a look at this in the next 5 slides. So first of all, when we look at this global footprint, the first thing that contributes to increased revenue is really the ability to expand to a new region in weeks instead of months, 2 weeks instead of, let's say, 3+ months. And this ability, opens up new markets for you at very low risk. Secondly, the ability to actually go close to your customers, your users, reduce network latency, and that delivers that customer experience, that user experience that they expect and desire. So when we look at this breadth of instance types, why is this important? So the ability to really pick and compute instance that best fit your workload, your application, be it the specific disk performance required from a highly performant database, or the memory footprint that's required because you want to load a device graph into memory. AWS provides you with the ability and more options to pick from to actually optimize this compute capability specific to your workload. And this optimization leads to higher efficiency, and higher efficiency then impacts your net margin. So when we look at Graviton2 as an example of the long-term thinking at AWS, we developed this ARM-based chip because we wanted to have something that we can focus on cloud native optimization. And the result is a chip that provides 40% better price performance than similar instance types in other families. And because we actually developed this ourselves, we own the security for this from end to end, and we're able to innovate faster on this than anywhere else. So you will see more frequent releases and therefore more frequent price performance improvements than at any other instance family. When we look at advertising science and analytics, there are three broad buckets that we can focus on. The first one really is when we look at machine learning. What we have discovered is that the majority of data science teams are actually spent on the infrastructure, really, to provision the tools and the data that's needed to actually run machine learning. So our innovation there is focused on the ability to democratize these services so that data science teams, machine learning teams can spend less time managing, deploying, and operating machine learning infrastructure and more time on the actual optimization and deployment of production models. Secondly, with that loss of identifier, analytical services are now significantly more complex. Combined with the high volume that is being experienced, more than ever, the selection of the best purpose-built database for your workload has now become critical. So be it a relational database, a NoSQL database like DynamoDB, a graph database like Neptune, a time series database, or any one of the 15 plus other purpose-built databases at AWS. The key here is picking the best database for your workload enables that workload to run more efficiently and therefore at a lower cost. And finally, what we've discovered is that customers are spending a significant amount of time governing their data. So simply managing that data to make sure that they actually adhere to the privacy regulations. And so innovating here to deliver Redshift data sharing across accounts and lake formation that enable you to actually govern your data in a centralized place consistently across all your data repositories are significant features and services that enable you to spend less time maintaining your database and more time building customer solutions. So when we look at reaching audiences at scale and the data that you need for that, AWS Data Exchange provides you with a premium set of providers that enable you to actually purchase those data sets that you need. In addition, you can also make a determination whether you want to monetize your data set and become a provider of such a data set. So when we look at AWS partners, we have the largest partner ecosystem in the cloud today. And this enables you to select the right partner for the solution that you need, or the right partner for the solution that you actually want to build. So these include the largest ISVs in the market and some of the largest systems integrators in the market today. Looking at the customer base of AWS, you can see in this sample of customers here that we have customers across virtually every vertical in advertising and marketing. And because our product roadmap are driven by customers, this means that we also have the services that can fulfill just about any workload that you may have. In addition, it provides us with that experience that's needed to deliver the performance and the solutions that you want. And as we like to say, there is no compression of experience. It should be noted that in this customer audience, that it also has a significant network effect that's beneficial for customers. Be that, the sharing of data, or the faster delivery of data, or the low latency that is being achieved by being located in the same region or in the same AZ. So let's take a look at the solutions that we've built around these trends. First, when we look at first-party data platforms, what you see here is a small sample of the AWS services being provided and the partners that actually specialize in these first-party data platforms. So let's take a closer look at one that is most likely familiar to you. So Salesforce, with its 150,000 plus customers, is probably a household name for you. And when you look at their CDP service, Customer Data Platform Service, imagine the challenges that this actually face, right? Be it the volume of data that they have to ingest, or how frequently and how fast that fluctuate, or the demand that is placed on providing a unified identifier within that, and the performance required, in this case delivered by DynamoDB. When you look at the results that Salesforce achieved with AWS in this regard, using auto-scaling and spot instances to reduce their cost by 62%, or the ability to actually spin up a new region in weeks instead of months, I am sure that you can see how this actually impacted both net margin and time to market. Looking at data sharing, let's take an example of the Merkle Clean Room and what that actually entails, and what the impact was for Merkle. So Merkle developed the Mercury Identity Resolution Platform, and in this platform, they need to actually share data with customers, enable customers to actually query that data, and to join that subsets of data with their own data. So in order to do this, Merkle actually employed Redshift data sharing, along with a number of other AWS services to provide the privacy, safe, at-scale workspace that's required, and the fully managed services needed to actually deliver this product for their customers. Now, looking at advertising intelligence, both the veracity, the volume, the speed, and the complexity of data that we actually have to process today, it is clear that traditional analytical methods and services will no longer suffice. So a key focus here is really the machine learning capability that AWS actually brings to bear. So let's take a look at how one company actually utilized this to expedite their time to market. Now, looking at Freewheel, and what they do is they predict their advertising supply on a continuous basis. And the reason they do this is to ensure that they deliver the supply, the audiences that they have promised to their customers. And so this is an ongoing process. And as you can see, at quite significant volume. But when Freewheel actually analyzed how and where they're spending developer time and cost, they discovered that more than 80% of the developers, specifically the data scientist team, was actually spent in the implementation, management, and maintenance of the infrastructure required for machine learning. So specifically, this is the data engineering component, cleaning data, ingesting data, selecting data sets, tracking that we've spoken of before. So they embarked on a project to actually replace that infrastructure with SageMaker Studio. And the result was extremely positive. As you can see here, they reduced the effort of that team by 60%. So simply stated, 60% more capacity to actually develop new product. And in addition to that, they reduced their infrastructure cost by 50%. So less time spent in implementing and maintaining infrastructure, and more time spent actually optimizing machine learning models and delivering product to your customers. Looking at advertising platforms and looking at the specific demands of real-time bidding, with the significant demands in terms of volume, over 1 million to 2 million bid requests per second at single-digit millisecond latency, sub 10 millisecond, and at the lowest cost possible, place a significant demand on any infrastructure environment. Looking at automated bid filtering as a solution, or traffic shaping as we've seen it, has the same type of requirements. So let's take a look at how one such company actually facilitated this. So Integral Ad Science provide a critical service to their customers. This is the evaluation of an ad impression or an ad opportunity, if you will, to determine whether this is fraudulent or not. And they have to actually process that accurately within 10 to 50 milliseconds, the majority of the time less than 10 milliseconds. Now, they were able to do this, and in last year they actually migrated to AWS with significant benefits. To date, they've been able to reduce their cost by 12%, but that's just the first step. One of the benefits of cloud computing is that you can actually continuously improve your cost footprint, and that benefit is available immediately. In addition, the ability for them to actually scale up their infrastructure in minutes instead of 6 weeks really opened significant revenue opportunities, because they can take on new customers and new revenue opportunities immediately instead of a 6-week delay. Now, finally, when we look at that customer experience, when we look at building a personalization service, it's typically an extensive period of development. But AWS has innovated in this space, and with services like Amazon Personalize, Amazon Pinpoint, and Amazon Connect, customers can now use these higher level services to really expedite their time to market by simply utilizing these services and then customizing them. And you can see the customers that actually utilize this to delight their users. So SparkPost is one of those big companies that you may not have heard of before. But the chances are, when you actually receive an email from your favorite vendor, that that email was customized by SparkPost. Now, in the delivery of email, you're faced with a significant fluctuation of volume, and SparkPost had to be able to process this. So be it the use of Lambda functions or SQS to provide a queuing service, or DynamoDB to provide the database scalability and performance that's required. SparkPost utilized AWS services to completely revamp their solution set. And the result is that they had a 30% drop in cost per million, cost per thousand, cost per miller. So a 30% drop in their cost per thousand. And they decreased their cost of sending analytics by 50%, so their analytical workload. But most significantly, they were able to facilitate email volume increase year over year of 40%. Now just think about this. When you grow rapidly like this, you can either spend your time consistently and continuously adding new capacity, receiving those new servers, configuring and installing and deploying them, or you can simply increase that capacity automatically or at the click of a button and spend your time building new services and products that your customers would love. So let's wrap this up. So what we've shown you is how AWS has actually provided solutions for customers in production at enterprise scale and end-to-end, and how the breadth and depth of AWS functionality and services is actually driving your priorities of increased revenue and increased net margin. So what are the next steps? If these solution areas or industry trends are of interest to you, please contact your account management team if you would like to take a deeper dive in that. I have 3 recommendations for you. The first one is do try the Graviton 2 instances. I am sure the performance and cost improvements will delight you. The second one is SageMaker Studio can significantly reduce your time to market of your machine learning products. Please do give that a try. And then finally, to reach and to expand your audiences at scale, do evaluate the data providers in AWS Data Exchange, or better yet, evaluate that to actually monetize your own data sets. So, thank you very much for attending today, for your time today. And as always, your feedback drives what we do. So please complete the session survey. Thank you and have a great day.